well, I finally got some time to get back to working on the Jeep. The next thing I want to do is remake the wheel wells and the rear floor section. It's kind of hard to even tell, but there are a couple of beads on here, and I don't have a bead roller, so I'm going to have to get creative here. Since I've already got the shape of the bead I want laid out in CAD, it's pretty easy to use the laser cutter to cut a template. My first guess was off by a bit. This was made from part of one of the axle shafts from the Jeep, so it should harden up nicely. That little guy got tempered, polished up a little bit. Now it pops in the air hammer and ready to beat on some metal. First I need to figure out what that metal looks like. The result of that is not perfect. I think if I wanted to, I could do some body work and get it pretty good, but this thing's going to be more of a mule than a show pony. And I'm going to coat the interior in bed liner, so I think any of the unevenness is not really going to bother me. It did also get a little bit of a crown to it that I'll have to straighten out, but if I'd done it with the bead roller, I would have expected that anyway. I think this one's good enough that this is the part where I normally say I'm going to do the other one off camera, except I did that one first. That way it's less metal if I screw it up, and it seems more like I know what I'm doing on video. Since I've already patched this one and fixed the brace, and this piece is okay, I'm only going to replace these two pieces. I'm going to go ahead and say this capacitor that has part of it missing and a lot of black stuff around it is probably my problem. Luckily that one came as a 5-pack. It turns out I may have sourced the wrong capacitor when I built this mag brake, because the replacement one blew too, but I replaced that with a different capacitor, and it seems a lot happier now. I cut the little triangle piece off the passenger side, thinking I'd reuse it. Then I realized that's a dumb idea and it's going to be a lot easier just to make new ones. That one's kind of rotted anyway. I didn't quite get the geometry of this right the first time, so minor adjustment with the grinder. Let's get this brace next. The driver's side brace is just a hat channel that wraps around the fender. The one for the passenger side is a lot more complicated. It's sort of this baffle. There should actually be another piece here that wraps around. And that's because the spare tire mounted to the side of the Jeep here, well, that gives it a unique vintage Jeep look. They stopped putting the spares on the Jeep there for a reason. It kind of sticks away out in space, and if you hit it on something, it's just going to tear everything up here. So while I like the look, I don't think I'm going to hang the spare off the side here. So just to simplify things, I think I'm going to make the same style brace for this side. So I cut the outside of these to final shape. Make it easier to match the middle, I'm going to spot weld these together and then cut it out in one go. Well, somehow I managed to not get video of the other bends, but end result is we've got two sets like this, and now I just need to weld a piece of metal in between them. Of course, I ran out of the weld-through primer partway through that. I had to finish up with some regular primer. In case there are any gaps or pinholes in the welds, I want to just run a bead of seam sealer down over this. That'll keep any moisture and dirt out. I had some trouble getting good pinch welds on some of this. I think I just had too much weld-through primer on there because can was running out and it was coming out really thick. So I ended up just plug welding some of these. Overall, I might have spent a little too much time making these braces really nice, since they're not really ever going to be seen, but it's good practice. Now that those are done, it's time to move on to this floor section. I'm going to do this in a couple of pieces so that the center is removable, but of course the bead on this is different than the one that's on here, so You know, one thing that I've come to appreciate is sometimes in a project you just need to completely abandon what you're trying to do and start over with a different approach. I do feel like this is a pretty viable method for smaller panels, and especially stuff where it's not going to be seen as much. You know, if it's a floorboard that's going under carpet, battery box, that sort of thing. But since this is going to be visible, I'm just not happy with the results I'm getting from this. I could keep beating on this some more and get it better, but the big problem is, even with putting some screws through here, keeping that constrained well enough to get it to form up nicely without warping things is just not working very well. I reworked these to the point where I'm going to say they're good enough, but since I'm not totally happy with the outcome of this method, I think I'm going to shift gears here and do what I should have done from the beginning and build a bead roller. So if you want to see that, stick around.